Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Daska Discusses. Today, I'm not going to go through an old nostalgic film. I'm actually going to talk about a film that reminded me of the old days and old films and how films were made. I'm going to be discussing the film Sinners, made or directed by Ryan Coogler last year, 2025. And I'm going to tell you how I felt about the film. So let's let it shine. Sinners feels like the old kind of film that studios used to make regularly in the 70s, 80s, and even the 90s. Serious, mid-budget to big-budget films that weren't trying to build a franchise. But before that, guys, before we go through it, please don't forget to click follow on Spotify and Apple and leave a review. I love Sinners. I watched it about 4 times now. It never gets boring. It's actually special. It's a return to old-fashioned storytelling, and there's more to it. Sinners has some deep themes in the film regarding the Jim Crow laws of the Deep South and that period of time in America. It's set in 1930s in the Mississippi Delta and the deep American South during that era. And obviously the director, Ryan Coogler, director of Creed and 2 of the Black Panther films. Well, there's only 2. Big fan of them. And I'm not an actual Marvel fan either. That setting is crucial, guys. The racial tension, segregation laws, poverty, the religious intensity. It starts off, like I said, preacher boy. The son of a preacher boy. That's son of a preacher. That's what they call him, preacher boy. He's a Sammy, as he's known. Now, the religious intensity of the 30s South aren't just about background details. They shape the entire mood, the power of this film, and the moral conflict of this story. Good and evil, obviously. The movie's called Sinners. Think about it. Now, the cast itself, guys, is pretty huge. Michael B. Jordan plays Smoke and Stack, the twins. That's pretty amazing that he can play 2 of these characters, and they're very different. At the start of the film, I'm just thinking, I don't know if this is going to work, but it does. Haley Steinfeld, Miles Catton, who plays Sammy, Jack O'Connell, plays Remick, the Irish vampire. I love that guy. Wunmu Masaku plays Annie. Jamie Lawson, Omar Benson Miller, and plays Cornbread, and Delroy Lindo plays Delta Slim. Now, if you're a fan of the film Blood In, Blood Out, you'll know who he is. That's a stacked list. Now, let's discuss what exactly I'm going to be talking about in this. Now, what Sinners reminded me of, it gave me that when I was watching it, probably not I've seen it 4 times. So the first time I was just taking it all in at IMAX and it was epic, right? And I know you're thinking, well, Daska, your channel's about nostalgic films and old films, but this movie reminded me after the second and third viewing, I'm like, hang on a minute. I'm getting some major nostalgic hits here. Now, I know, obviously, the most obvious one that everyone says when they walk out is From Dusk Till Dawn, 100%, yeah? Now, other films that definitely remind me of Sinners are, now bear with me, The Deer Hunter, the slow burn, the planning of the Deer Hunter, you're probably thinking as if The Deer Hunter is a completely different film, but think about it like this. If you've seen The Deer Hunter, the first probably 45 minutes to an hour is legit a wedding, planning of a wedding, a bunch of friends all meeting together, having a few drinks, they come back from work, all this big event, planning, your developing characters, and you got your friends, family, and there's a big party, right? That's the only kind of thing I can think of for the only little remnants of what it reminded me of, just a tad. Near Dark, right? The old 80s vampire film, that 80s energy, the low-key lighting, the setting of that itself. Vampires by John Carpenter, the location of that abandoned house. Both films strip that supernatural thing down to something gritty and morally ugly. So between Vampires and Near Dark, very, very similar. Again, with John Carpenter, The Thing, that garlic scene. Remember in Sinners where they're picking at the garlic and they're testing to see who's a vampire? Very similar to the blood testing scene in The Thing. Django Unchained, I reckon, reminds me of Sinners because both they fuse that southern gothic kind of atmosphere with explosive violence and turning oppression, faith, and revenge into something more stylish and deeply rooted in America's past, right? Or haunted past, you could say. Blade is another one. The battle sequence and the way the vampires die, in a way, yeah. Um, Sinners feels like a film from a time when studios took risks on complex stories that weren't designed to become cinematic universes, all right? So that's what I'm saying. All these films that I'm talking about in the past, a lot of them don't have sequels and all that, and the slow burn is important. However, the biggest of all, we all know, the biggest kind of like link from Sinners to something in the past has got to be from Dusk Till Dawn, 100%. You've got two brothers on the run from something in their past, not heroes, not clean. They're carrying baggage, just like in Sinners. Then suddenly, almost without warning, 40 minutes in, 50 minutes in, the vampire element crashes in. It doesn't slowly creep in, it hits